On 1758, there was a boy by the name of Pai'ea who was born to Kekuiapohiva and Keoa Kupua Paikalani, also known as Keoua Nui. He was born in the heiau of Kokoiki, which resides on the district of Kohala in Hawaii Island. People say that he was born on the same year as Halley's Comet as it traveled through the Hawaiian Islands. Now, this theory is referenced to a bright star that sailed across the Hawaiian sky on the night that Pai'ea was born. It will not be until his early adult life that Pai'ea would resume and take on the name of Kamehameha. He will be known as Pai'ea Kamehameha, also known as Kamehameha the Great, also known as Kamehameha the First of the dynasty of 5 Kamehameha. He was born to a wohi rank chief. Wohi is a term of ni'aupio mating. He was the nephew of Kalani Opu'u, who was the mo'i or ultimate supreme ruler of Hawaii Island at the time. Kalani Opu'u had a son by the name of Ki Vala'o, who was the son of Kalani Opu'u and the cousin to Pai'ea. After the death of Kalani Opu'u would give the lands to Ki Vala'o, but Ku Ka'ilimoku, the war god image, to Pai'ea. And this would result in a bloody battle, but also the death of Ki Vala'o in the years to come. In 1789, Simon Metcalf, who was the captain of the Eleanora, along with his son Thomas Metcalf, who was captaining the Fair American, they were fur traders and they planned to spend the winter in the Hawaiian Islands to save on the trip. The Eleanora arrived in the district of Kohala on Hawaii Island, and after a confrontation with a local chief, Metcalf then sailed to the adjoining island, Maui, to wait till things settled down. Captain Simon Metcalf anchored his trading ship, the Eleanora, just off of McKenna Bay to barter for necessary provisions. As he bartered off for necessary provisions, a chief stole one of Metcalf's small boats and killed one of the watchmen that was guarding the ship. Now, Captain Metcalf, he fired his cannons into the village and captured a few Hawaiians who told him that the boat was taken by the village people of Olowalu. So he sailed to Olowalu, but found that the boat had already been broken up into nails, and nails were very, very treasured items to have because Hawaiians didn't have metal. They used the nails for fishhook adze, drills, daggers, and just spears as a sharp point. Now, the chiefess at that time was Kolola, and he knew that this would erupt to be a very, very big situation. So he declared a 3-day kapu on all canoes that would go out to the Eleanor for trade. And that was mainly used to cool things down because tempers was getting very heated. When the kapu was lifted, Kalola's husband, Kapuiki, returned only the boat's kneel and parts of the watchman's bones. And this angered Metcalf so much to the point where he invited villagers to the ship to do trading, but he had other intentions. He had all of his cannons and guns loaded, pointed to the shoreline of Olowalu, and as the canoes approached, he opened fire, killing hundreds of Hawaiians. Many of them were wounded as well. The Hawaiians referred to this massacre as Kololo Pahu, which means spilt brains, because guts were just all over the place and the water was stained red. Now, in ancient days, Olowalu Valley, that was a pu'uhonua, is a place of refuge and sanctuary for anyone that was fleeing oppression. After the massacre, Metcalf pulled his anchors and sailed back to the island of Hawaii, trying to escape what he's done. But the Olowalo massacre was, all of this series of events was already set into motion. And basically, the two ships decided to leave. Now, John Young and Isaac Davis. John Young was part of the Eleanor crew, and Isaac Davis was part of the Fair American crew. They befriended Kamehameha I, Paea, and they became respected translators and close trusted advisors to Kamehameha. They were instrumental in Kamehameha's military tactics as well as ammunition and cannons. And Kamehameha was able to purchase the first cannon, which he called Lopaka, to help secure part of Maui Island. So several months after the Olowalo massacre, Kololo watched the great battle of Kepanivai, that's in Iao Valley, where Kamehameha would storm into Maui with over 20,000 men. And this battle took several days, to the point where all of the bodies were damming the rivers of Iao. And it was really due to the fact that Kamehameha had Isaac Davis and John Young to help him acquire these weapons, such as the cannons, muskets, gun, and not to mention gunpowder. All of that was traded through sandalwood and through whale oil. In 1790, just before the Olowalo massacre, the Fair American was captured by Ke'emoku at Puako in Kauai High. This Fair American was raided, and all of the guns and ammunition and brass cannons were stolen and recovered and made a part of Kamehameha's arsenal. He made John Young and Isaac Davis his advisors. Now, Kamehameha gave the name Lopaka to this powerful cannon that was captured and taken from the Fair American. The Lopaka cannon was used in the Battle of Kepanivai on Maui, which secured his ship, as well as the Pa'auhau on Oahu Island. Now, this famous cannon, Lopaka, was dragged up to a place called Kevelovelo and was fired into Iao Valley. The thundering sound of the Lopaka cannon was absolute terror amongst the Hawaiians for never hearing anything as loud as that before, and it slaughtered hundreds and hundreds of people. While the Lopaka cannon was being fired, John Young and the Maui warriors gathered together and tried to seize the Lopaka cannon. The cannon fell into the hands of Keo'ua for a short period of time, and John Young ran for his life along with Isaac Davis to a place called Honoka'a to escape this fiery cannon. It was used for a brief moment of time by Keo'ua, who was the leader at that time in the island of Maui. Kamehameha's warriors would pursue this individual and try to reclaim the cannon before it was being used against Kamehameha in his time. At that time, Kalani Kupule, who was also a Maui chief, escaped to Oahu, and they sought shelter there for a short time before Kamehameha, John Young, and his warriors got to Oahu Island. When Captain George Vancouver visited the islands in 1793, he observed that John Young and Isaac Davis were the confidants in all of Kamehameha's businesses. They followed him everywhere that they went to. Apparently, Lopaka was lashed to a sled and was pulled by ropes, even through difficult terrain. It was removed from carriage and slung onto long poles. The image that you see there is a description of what may have happened in Iao Valley and what the Lopaka cannon may have looked like. With the necessary provisions and newly obtained ammunition and cannons, Kamehameha was able to slaughter the islands of Hawaii Island, Molokai, Maui, Lanai, and his unification of the islands grew and grew. It was also a result of hundreds of Hawaiian warriors dying, but Kamehameha strengthened his armies. He defeated Kalani Kupule and Kahikili on Maui, and his next two islands were Oahu and Kauai Island. The next on his list, he would go back to Hawaii Island to settle a dispute amongst the lesser-ranked chiefs before setting sail to Oahu. The Oahu would gain control of Kualoa as well as other parts of Oahu Island. After Kamehameha defeated Kalani Kupule and the Maui forces, the next island on his to-do list was to capture the island of Oahu. In 1795, Kamehameha loaded approximately 900 war canoes and set sail for Oahu. It is said that they traveled in the shadow of Diamond Head to prevent any of the Oahu warriors from seeing the large fleet of canoe come ashore. Through the shadow of Diamond Head, they beached along the shores of Waikiki, came up through Manoa, and then later Nu'uanu. The vast majority of the Oahu chiefs lived in the valley of Nu'uanu, or Nu'uanu Ahupua, for its vast water source. Kamehameha landed approximately 4,000 troops, and it is said that canoes lined up along the shore from Waialae to Waikiki. Kamehameha and his men would push the Oahu forces deeper and deeper within Nu'uanu Valley. One fleet of Kamehameha's warriors went from the top, and the other went from below. They were able to push Kalani Kupule and the Oahu chiefs further back into Nu'uanu Valley until they reached the very end of the cliffside known as Nu'uanu Pali Cliffs. There, the bloody battle continued, and over 3,000 Oahu warriors plummeted and fell to their death at Pali Lookout. It was a major defeat for the Oahu forces. It started at Punch Bowl, also known as Pu'uwaina, and it went all the way to the back of Nu'uanu. Because of this war efforts, Kalani Kupule lost the Oahu Island throne, which made Kamehameha gain control of Oahu. By gaining control of Oahu, he gained the lands of Kualoa, he gained the lands of all districts such as Ko'olauloa, Ko'olaupoko, Kona, Ewa, Waianae, as well as Waialua. The last on his list was the island of Kauai. After the Battle of Nu'uanu, Kamehameha prepared and strengthened his armies to attack Kauai Island. This was approximately the time of 1810. The ruler of Kauai at the time was King Kaumoali'i. Kamehameha goes to Waianae and he starts his first attempt to get to Kauai. The first attempt would fail. Halfway through the I'e'iwaho Channel, Kamehameha and his men would sail right into a storm. Half of his canoe fleet got swamped and sank, and Kamehameha and his men needed to retreat. After the recovery efforts, which took about a year and a half, Kamehameha made a second attempt to invade Kauai. The second attempt resulted in another fail. The failure was a result of his warriors catching measles, infectious disease that a lot of them could not fight off or did not have the immunity to fight off. This made Kamehameha prepare for his third attempt. Meanwhile, King Kaumoali'i eventually decides to surrender and cede Kauai to Kamehameha to avoid any bloodshed. And by way of messenger, King Kaumoali'i yielded, and Kamehameha was finally able to unite all the islands under one rule. The terms and conditions to King Kaumoali'i was that King Kaumoali'i would remain governor of the island. And to assure that there would be no rebellion, Kamehameha sent his favored wife, Ka'ahumanu, to be the Kahunanui regent in Kauai Island, only to result in the love affair of Kaumoali'i and Ka'ahumanu, which would give birth to King Kaumoali'i's son. And this is how Kamehameha was able to unify all the islands under one rule. The picture that you see there is a picture of King Kaumoali'i. Iliahi, also known as the sandalwood, was highly valuable source of wood and lumber in ancient Hawaii. It was discovered during the time of the whaling industry, and the iliahi was a wood with a high fragrant scent. The scent was so perfumed that it repelled insects such as silkworms and moths. And in the Orient of China and Hong Kong and Taiwan, the Asians would make great chests, cabinets, and closets out of this very special sandalwood. The sandalwood was gathered in large pits that would be about the size of a European ship, and this would be traded off for commodities such as silk, gold, metal, china, guns, cannons, and gunpowder. And this is how Kamehameha was able to fund his whole war expedition. It is said that Kamehameha himself went up to the mountains to cut sandalwood. Other smaller ranked chiefs got onto this sandalwood trading, and in a matter of a decade, nearly every iliahi or sandalwood tree was cut down. This would serve as a problem for the future Hawaiians and future generations. You see that iliahi grows at a very slow rate. We do have some remnants of iliahi trees, but the iliahi trees that was used in this war efforts grew to be about 20 to 30 feet, which took hundreds of years to get. The picture that you see there is a sandalwood or iliahi shrub that was taken high above Ohikilolo Mountains in Waianae. Kamehameha I dies in 1819 and names his son Liholiho successor to the throne. Liholiho is the son of Kamehameha's most sacred wife, Keopuolani. Liholiho will share the rule of his newly appointed role as mo'i with two women, Ka'ahumanu, which is his stepmother, and Keopuolani, which is his birth mother. Both women will carry the title of Kuhina Nui, which means prime regent, that will share the throne and reign of Hawaii with Liholiho Kamehameha II. Kamehameha II would live in a time of drastic change. One of the changes resulted in the breaking of the Ai Kapu system. Ai means to eat and Kapu means restricted. This rule was known as the restrictive eating law. It forbade women and men from eating under the same roof, and it also forbidden women from eating certain sacred foods that we spoke about previously. Basically, Ka'ahumanu and Keopuolani would advise Liholiho to sit next to them and eat of the same foods. And in doing so, proved that all the 40,000 gods of the Hawaiian culture was proved to be false. As the attendants and all of the witnesses to this breaking of the Ai Kapu watched two ali'i eat from the same plate with the same food, everyone feared in life that the wraths of the gods would come and punish them, but nothing actually happened. The breaking of the Kapu system could not come at a better time, for only a year later, the arrival of the missionaries would come, spreading the Christianity of God. At that time would be a time of change. You would have traditionalists trying to uphold and preserve things such as our tikis and our images and culture, and you would have the brand new Christian system that would be introduced to the Hawaiians. This was all during the time of Liholiho Kamehameha II. In 1823, he, his wife, Kamamalu, and a delegate of 9 other Hawaiians would be the first monarchy to travel to England on a diplomatic voyage. It would take approximately 5 months to sail from Hawaii down the Pacific around Cape Horn up through Brazil, Florida, Washington, New York, before making the trek across the Atlantic to England. Upon arrival of England, the Queen, Kamamalu, would contract measles and die in England. Never leaving her side, Liholiho would die 6 days later, also of measles. 2 ali'i, Queen Kamamalu and Kamehameha II, would return back to the islands in specially prepared coffins, naming the next ruler to be. The death of Kamehameha the Great in 1819 could not have come at a better time. The death of the Kamehameha made available the ruler, his son Liholiho, to take reign. During his son's reign, once again there was the breaking of the Aikapu system, in which women and men were not allowed to eat. The three individuals who were responsible for the breaking of the Aikapu was himself Kamehameha II, Liholiho. It was also Kuhina Nui Ka'ahumanu, which was his stepmother, and Keopuolani, which is his biological mother. Because of this breaking of the Aikapu system, it started a civil war within the islands of Hawaii. This civil war was led by Kekuaokalani and his wife Manono. These were the traditionalists. These were the supporters of the ancient gods. They were the supporter of the ancient customs and traditions. And they would go around the islands trying to defend temples and structures that were being taken down due to the breaking of the Aikapu system. The picture that you see here in this slide is a picture of a battle that was fought in Kailua Kona on Hawaii Island. This is a picture of Kekuaokalani and his wife Manono that were able to salvage and also accumulate various guns and gunpowder to help in the aid of the civil revolution in the islands. Each and every one of them would fight to their death, which would result in Kamehameha II, Liholiho, winning the victory of the Civil War. Hewa Hewa was a high kahuna nui, or a high priest. He sided with Liholiho, Keopuolani, and Kamehameha. And he was the one that prophesied of this time of change. And he was the one that was very instrumental in tearing down all of the ki'i, or wooden images, as well as toppling down all of the stone temples throughout the islands. It was Hewa Hewa who led this charge against Manono and Kekuaokalani. With the breaking of the Aikapu system and the recent arrival of Calvinist missionaries in 1820, the Hawaiian religion will go through turmoil. They will go from multitudes of gods to worshiping and practicing one God. This is how it was done. During the whaling industry, there was an orphan by the name of Henry Opukakahaya who sneaks onto a whaling ship. Henry Opukakahaya fled on a whaling ship after seeing both parents die in a recent Hawaiian war and in the Olowalu massacre. Being a stowaway and hiding for a brief moment in time, Henry Opukakahaya was later discovered and continued to travel along with the whaling merchants. The whaling merchants would eventually return back to New England or Boston, where he would become an orphan at one of the various Christian orphanages. As he grows up, he will share his plight and story of warfare and the hard living that he experienced as a child. After he converts into Christianity and after being educated, he pleads for the missionaries to go back to his homelands of Hawaii and, quote, save, unquote, his people. The American Board of Foreign Missions heard of this and found it as an opportunity to spread the word of God. Leading this Calvinist missionary group was Hiram Bingham. Hiram Bingham was also a board member of the American Board of Commissions for Foreign Missions, the ABCFM. Henry and Hiram would come back to Hawaii to promote Ola Ho, which translates into everlasting life, as indicated in the Bible. Christianity arrived in 1820, just a few months after the death of Kamehameha and the recent breaking of the Aikapu system. It was the missionaries that would teach the Bible teachings to Ka'ahumanu and Keopuolani, and it would prove that it would be useful in converting other Hawaiians to Christianity by targeting the Hawaiian women or the chiefesses They were able to influence the vast majority of Hawaiian maka'ainana. Thus, in a matter of years, a great deal of Hawaiians were being baptized. Hawaiians normally only carried one name, such as a Hawaiian name. However, during their baptism, they were advised to take Christian first names, such as Henry, such as Lydia, and such as other predominant Hawaiian individuals as well. In 1820, once again, the missionaries arrived to the islands, and they would send boatload after boatload to help spread Christianity. In 1823, Kamehameha II, known as Liholiho, traveled with his wife Kamamalu to England. After the 5-month duration, Kamamalu falls ill with measles and dies in London. Never leaving her side, her husband, King Liholiho, dies of measles as well. The both of them would arrive home in specialized coffins aboard their vessel and ship. Prior to leaving, Kamehameha II names his younger brother, Kauikeauli, successor to the throne. Kauikeauli would become known as Kamehameha III. Kauikeauli Kamehameha III starts reigning at the age of 8 years old in 1824. It wasn't until the time of Kamehameha III that the Sandwich Isles became known and coined as the Hawaiian Islands. The Earl of Sandwich was a sponsor to James Cook and his expedition to the South Pacific as well as Hawaii. In honor of the sponsor, Earl of Sandwich, Captain Cook named these islands the Sandwich Isles in honor of him. It was used by Captain Cook, it was used by other lords of admiralty in England, and it was also used by King Kamehameha I. It wasn't until after the death of Kamehameha II, while the monarchs were in England, that Kamehameha III coined the Sandwich Isles to the Hawaiian Islands. It was chosen by the kingdom government, once again after the death of Kamehameha II, and was used ever since the reign of Kamehameha III, from Sandwich to Hawaiian Islands. The death of Liholiho, Kamehameha II, in England ruled that Kauikeauli would serve as Kamehameha III. Kauikeauli was the younger brother to Liholiho. He's named the successor or mo'i of the islands in 1824. At the time, he is only about 8 years old, and he becomes the youngest ruling mo'i in the islands. He also will be, because of his age, he'll also be the longest reigning Kamehameha with just about approximately 30 somewhat years. Kauikeauli ruled in a very hard time in Hawaiian history. There was already the conversion of Christianity. There was lots of foreign businessmen, lots of individuals who came with the intentions of starting businesses and a new life. He also was in a time period where Hawaiian culture, because of Christianity, was being put on the back burner. Hula was banned. A lot of cultural practices such as medicinal healing was banned. Some of the historical gains and plights of Kauikeauli was, number one, La Ho'i Ho'i Ea. La Ho'i Ho'i Ea is, La means day, Ho'i Ho'i means return, and Ea means sovereignty, the day that sovereignty was returned. It comes, this is all due to the Paulet affair. There was a British naval seaman by the name of Admiral George Paulet who came to the islands and demanded to speak to Kamehameha III. He came to the islands trying to settle a dispute amongst some foreign businessmen, specifically some British. And Kauikeauli did not give him the time of day to meet to discuss any of the terms or outcomes of this particular disagreement between a Hawaiian and a British. Because George Paulet was highly insulted, he basically took arms and occupied and took over parts of the Hawaiian monarchy. And he lowered the Hawaiian flag, burnt some of the Hawaiian flags, put up the British flag, and basically Hawaii was held hostage for several months. In the meantime, there were a few of Kauike'uli's cabinet members, such as Dr. Jarrett P. Judd, who wrote letters to the Queen, as well as the Prince of France, and the President of the United States at that time, it was John Taylor. And approximately 4 to 5 months later, there was Admiral Richard Thomas, who came to the islands, and he was basically the Pacific Ocean's Captain Admiral within the Navy fleet of England. And basically, he corrected all the wrong that George Paulet done. He ordered George Paulet to return back to England, where he would be extradited and heard over hearing. In the meantime, he was able to return the sovereignty back to the Hawaiian people. This took place in July of 1830, I believe. Anyway, the day was known as La Ho'iho'i'ea, and it took place at the current site of Thomas Square, because it was through Lord Admiral Richard Thomas that was able to assist in returning the sovereignty. During a special religious ceremony along the steps of Kauai Ha'o Church, Kauike'uli makes a public speech and announcement where he utters the words "Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono," which means the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. This comes after La Ho'iho'i'ea. In the meantime, more continued trade and business are being taken place through foreign businessmen as well as the Hawaiian monarchy. In the meantime, Kauike'uli sends some diplomats such as Timoteo Ha'alilio, who goes to Belgium, France, as well as the Americas, to get treaties to acknowledge that Hawaiian is an independent country. And Timoteo Ha'alilio is successful at doing so. And that is the day where we celebrate our Independence Day, and that is known as La Ku'oko'a. La Ku'oko'a falls within Thanksgiving weekend, so we're fast approaching La Ku'oko'a. Probably the most detrimental thing to the Hawaiian people was the mahele. Mahele was the land division. It privatized land. Some people call it the Great Mahele, but it wasn't great for Hawaiians. It was great for the foreign businessmen and people who had money, but it wasn't great for the Hawaiians who were born and raised and natives to the land. The Mahele took place in 1848. Basically, it divided the land into three parts: the Crown lands, public lands, and Kuleana lands. And this was the opportunity for businessmen to purchase and own land. The author of that mahele was Dr. Jarrett P. Judd. Now, the original terms to this was to, first of all, denounce your citizenship, and then number two, swear an oath of allegiance to the Hawaiian monarchy. And that came with a lot of opposition by foreign businessmen who did not want to release their citizenship at their respective countries. Nevertheless, Kauike'uli was the longest reigning Kamehameha. He would have children, he would hanai children, but none of his children would live to be successors. When he dies, he names his hanai son, Alexander Liholiho, to be Kamehameha IV. In 1848, the mahele was introduced. The idea of owning land was very foreign to the Hawaiian people. Land could not be owned because land was believed to have been Papahanaumoku, Mother Earth, and you can't buy and sell your mother. In traditional land tenure, land could not be owned. The land was managed by the ali'i through the konohiki. It was through the hierarchy of ali'i class, such as ali'i nui controlled the island, which in turn would be helped and managed and maintained through the ali'i aimoku, who controlled the districts, and then later the konohiki, who controlled the ahupua'a. Because of this land tenure, they were unable to deny anyone access of the land and its resources. The resources and land belonged to the gods, and it belonged to Papahanaumoku. However, with the introduction of mahele, The mahele means to divide. It was to divide private land tenure. This would give the landowner exclusive ownership of land by one individual. Because of this individual land of ownership, they could deny access of land and the resources allowed from that particular land. Land could be sold or taken based on currency issues. So if you owed someone money, they could take your land in place of that money. Now, this is a very foreign concept. There was an individual by the name of Dr. Jared P. Judd, who was one of the advisors to Kamehameha III. He advised Kamehameha III to allow mahele under certain conditions. Number one, you would need to denounce your place of citizenship or country of citizenship and swear allegiance of oath to the Hawaiian monarchy and become one of the trusted or become one of the loyal servants to the Hawaiian monarchy. And number two, you would also need to purchase the land through the kingdom. So you would need to denounce your citizenship and swear allegiance of oath to the Hawaiian monarchy in order for you to purchase land. In 1849, Dr. Jared P. Judd took the Prince Kamehameha IV and Prince Kamehameha V, also known as Alexander Liholiho and Lot Kapuaiwa, to a diplomatic journey through France, England, as well as Germany. While away, other foreign businessmen felt it was their opportunity to persuade Kamehameha III into making private land available and also allowing them to keep and retain their citizenship. When Dr. Jared P. Judd returned to the islands 1 year later in 1850, most of the land started to be purchased, and there were no clause on which these individual landowners denounced their citizenship or swore allegiance of oath to the Hawaiian monarchy. This feuded Dr. Jared P. Judd very much, for Dr. Jared P. Judd himself denounced his American citizenship and declared allegiance of oath to the Hawaiian kingdom. This served to be a very detrimental use of land development. The land was divided into three parts. It was divided into public lands, in which lands could be privatized and owned, the crown lands, which belonged to the king, and only about 1% of the population could file claim for kuleana lands. These were lands that farmers and fishermen already occupied and already were cultivating for generation upon generation. They were able to make claim to these lands. However, the forms and applications were all written in English, which a lot of Hawaiian people could not read or write in English, and it also required a fee. The lands sold for approximately 25 to 35 cents an acre, a monetary value that Hawaiians did not have. With the purchase of land, foreign businessmen were able to cash in on their cash crop properties. At this time, sugar and pineapple was starting to be indeed a cash crop trade, riveting lots of profit for these businessmen. These businessmen could not hire nor could they contract native Hawaiians into working in the fields. Rather, they would solicit the aid and approval of the ali'i in allowing foreign laborers to come to the islands to help with these cash crops. In 1852, the very first sugar laborers were the Chinese, which were followed by the Japanese in 1868, the Portuguese in 1878, the Puerto Ricans in 1900s, Koreans in 1903, Filipinos in 1907, and the remaining of the Polynesian cousins in 1919. Most of the Chinese reigned from the Canton region of China. The Portuguese hailed from the Azores and Madeira Islands. The Filipinos that came, they were mostly Ilocano, with some Tagalog and some Visayan speakers. The Polynesians, which I spoke of, were mostly Samoan, and they came for religious reasons from the Mormon church, rather than to work in the plantation. Plantation came after their use of or their reasons for religious practices. Alexander Liholiho was the Hanai son of Kamehameha III. He would be named the successor upon the death of Kamehameha III Kawikeauli. Alexander Liholiho was raised in the royal school and taught at the very first school in Hawaii. He was American and British influence within the kingdom. He was highly influenced and very, very impressed with the British regalia. He also seen the changes in the Hawaiian society and Hawaiian culture, so he started a preservation society. It was a preservation of Hawaiian sovereignty. He also seen many of his Hawaiians dying off, so with the help of his wife, Emma Rourke, later to be known as Queen Emma, both went house to house and even used their own personal property and money to start the Queen's Hospital to provide free medical assistance to any ailing Hawaiian. He was of an angelistic faith, which started Iolani School for students of the Anglican faith. They also opened the very first Anglican church, St. Andrew's Priory, which is located in downtown Honolulu. As far as contributions made by Alexander Liholiho, known as Kamehameha IV, he started Queen's Hospital. Iolani Palace is named after him, and also St. Andrew's Priory. Upon his death would be his brother, Lot Kapuaiva, who would serve as Kamehameha V. Lot Kapuaiva would be named Kamehameha V. He would be the last of the Kamehameha dynasties. He asked for Princess Pauahi's hand in marriage, but she declined, marrying Charles Reed Bishop. Now, Lot Kapuaiva, also known as Kamehameha V, some of his contributions as an innovative leader was he rewrote the Hawaiian Constitution, which restored the power and authority back to the Hawaiian monarchy, or back to the kings and queens of Hawaii. Once again, he was the last of the Kamehameha dynasty. He was a bachelor. He did not marry, nor did he have any children. His death became very sudden, and he did not name a successor during his time of passing. Some of his other contributions to Hawaii was he started Kamehameha Day in honor of his grandfather. The original date was in December 17th. However, in December, it was the rainy months, and many of the Kamehameha celebrations would be canceled. The committee decided to move Kamehameha Day 6 months earlier, which would make it in June 17th, which is during the summer times. So it was promised with a little bit more sunshine, and the celebration has been consistent ever since. It has just celebrated its 100th Kamehameha Floral Day Parade. He also started the very first Memorial Day. This Memorial Day was on December 31st. It was not a memorial for any of our fallen victims of war. This was actually a Memorial Day of past ancestors, or past reigning monarchs, kings and queens that reigned prior to Kamehameha V. This Memorial Day fell on December 31st of every year. It is unknown when this Memorial Day in Hawaii stopped. However, this was the contributions of Lot Kapuaiva Kamehameha V. Once again, he would die, not naming a successor, and Hawaii would have its first elected king very shortly. After the death of Lot Kapuaiva Kamehameha V, Hawaii held its first election ever. The election, however, would only benefit individuals who owned land. The only individuals that were allowed to vote in this election were landowners. So that would limit the amount of votes for each of the following delegates. There are two delegates to the ballot. One, William Charles Lunalilo, who was an Ali'i by descent, as well as David La'amea Kalakaua, who was also the cousin of the Kamehamehas. The election was held in downtown Honolulu, right across where the current Iolani Palace is, the Ali'i Iolani Judiciary Center. Now, needless to say that William Charles Lunalilo was Hawaii's first elected king. His parents, again, were cousins to the Kamehameha dynasty, and some of his contributions as a leader, he started the Lunalilo home for the elderly Hawaiians that did not have family to take care of them. Because he was elected by the king, he was known as the people's king, and he decided to be buried at Kauai Ha'o Plaza to lay at rest beside his people. And his tomb still rests at Kauai Ha'o Church till this day. Unfortunately, he served just shy of 2 years, and he actually died of tuberculosis. William Charles Lunalilo, his father was Charles Kana'ina, who outlived his son as well as his wives. His father, Charles Kana'ina, owned a vast majority of land on the windward side of the islands. Once again, William Charles Lunalilo was the very first elected king, and his contributions was he started Lunalilo Home for the elderly. The sudden death of William Charles Lunalilo led to Hawaii's second election for king. In the ballot, returning to the election process was King David La'amea Kalakaua, and this time he would challenge the former Queen Emma, who was the wife of Kamehameha IV. It is said that Queen Emma won by vote of the public. However, ballots that were casted were won by David Kalakaua. Remember that in order to vote, you needed to own land. And if you own land, that meant you read. And if you own land, that meant you also had money. Women were not allowed to vote, and Kuleana land owners were also not allowed to vote. So this voting process did not represent the vast majority of people. In fact, it resulted in an uproar and a thrashing of the courthouse. There was a rebellion. They were all in favor of Queen Emma, and basically the town uproared because of this. Kalakaua was known as the Merry Monarch for his innovative contributions. He was the first ali'i to go on a worldwide tour. He actually went to Japan, China, England, as well as other parts throughout the world. He was known as the Renaissance King, and he would institute and also promote the very first Renaissance in Hawaii. We call that sort of Renaissance 1.0 because later in the 90s, 1970, 1980, 1990, Hawaii would see its second Renaissance. King David La'amea Kalakaua promoted the public display of hula. When he was very much influenced by the European royalty and gala. And upon his 50th birthday, he crowned himself king of Hawaii. So that also constituted him to get royal crowns for him and his wife. It cost almost $1 million for 2 sets of crowns in ancient Hawaii. And all of that money was given through land trade. During his coronations along Iolani Palace, he promoted hula to be brought back into the public, and for this reason he is known as the Merry Monarch, or the champion of hula preservation. He started the Haled Nau'a Society. The Haled Nau'a Society was to protect all things Hawaiian. This would also encourage the younger generation to learn from the elder generation so that the arts of canoe building and sailing and carving would not be lost. He also promoted the very first study abroad program in history where through the treaties that was written upon his worldwide tour, he would send Hawaiian students to these various countries such as China and Japan and Canada, and during their time of study, it's with their understanding that they would come back home to teach the Hawaiian people what was going on. He was the main grand designer for Iolani Palace. There was already a palace, but not one of its grand solitude as we know today. He was an innovative man. He also was quite an inventor. There's actually written proof of a torpedo, other bottle stoppers, just to name a few. Iolani Palace had electricity and a telephone long before the White House had. King David La'ameakalakaua would have grand jubilees at Iolani Palace and basically be known as the Merry Monarch and very much the festive king. He also seen a lot of his people die before him throughout the years through the collapse in population, and his motto was Ho'oulu Lahui Hawaii. Ho'oulu Lahui Hawaii means to increase the nation. So he promoted the more birthing of Hawaiian children and promoted the increase of the Hawaiian race. His contributions, Iolani Palace, the Renaissance movement, which opens hula back up to society, Hale Nau'a, the study abroad program. He was also part of the Freemasons Union. King David La'ameakalakaua would serve for a few years and name his sister Lili'uo Kalani to his successor. He actually died in San Francisco at the Grand Palace Hotel. He was also a man that served with lots of foreigners and businessmen who had a huge influence on him. And although he was trying to take part in restoring power back to the king, he was highly influenced and also outnumbered by the foreign business advisors. During his reign, there was the infamous Bayonet Constitution, which you will learn and read about very shortly. But the Bayonet Constitution basically was a forced signed document in him signing the Constitution, which took powers away from the king, and basically the king just became more of this visual icon of Hawaii rather than having the power to vote. His sister Lili'uokalani would make an attempt to change that, which will result in the loss of our Hawaiian throne.